Hey folks, welcome back. This is tutorial number 5 in our tower defense series using the default game engine for building a tower defense type game. I can almost see the finish line. We've got this video and one more, and we'll wrap it up. You know, when you build a game, it's not really a game unless you keep score. Got to figure out whether you've won or if you've lost. So in this particular tutorial, we're going to add a lot of capability associated with keeping score. We're also going to provide the ability to really influence gameplay. We've figured out basically already how to drag and drop a tower to a certain location, but it's going to have some fire exchanges. It's going to lose strength. We need to be able to repair it, get that strength restored, or we need the ability to upgrade it from a type 1 tower to a type 2 tower, or type 2 to type 3. So we're going to learn both those capabilities in this particular tutorial. As always, here in the description for build number 5, there's a full default project folder with all the files that you need for this particular build in a Google Drive. The URL is down there. Go ahead and download it. I would recommend putting it up on your screen while you're playing this video. It kind of helps you to kind of get a general sense of where we are as I walk through each of the various elements associated now with keeping score and then upgrading your towers. Okay, let's go ahead and kick off. Let's go ahead and just take a short moment here and just kind of calibrate where we are in the total project development cycle associated with our tower defense game. We see here we're in build number 5 out of a total of 6 builds. In this build, we're going to focus on really 2 things. We're going to learn how to keep score. There's going to be both resource points and health points, and we'll get into the distinction between the two and what you need to actually win, have a victorious level, or what you're going to not be able to attain and then have a non-victorious or losing level. The second thing we're going to do is add in an additional graphic user interface, and from that'll allow us to let the player select for a deployed tower whether he wants to repair it, whether he wants to upgrade it, or whether he wants to sell it back and gain the money so it can redeploy to another location. So that's kind of where we are. Let's go ahead and kick that off. Hey, as always, it's really nice to take a look at what's the end product of what we're going to really build. So I'm going to take just a couple snippets out of the operational game just to highlight a couple of the key elements that we're going to have within this particular build. Okay, when you destroy one of the enemy tanks, you're going to gain resources. So here you can see a tower has now just destroyed a tank. And you can see the little resource icon is created, and it floats back up to the very top of the screen where the graphic user interface adds a certain number of resource points to the player's score. Okay, now one of the things that you're really defending is your objective. So you're going to be penalized when an enemy tank reaches that objective. So in this particular case here, you see a tank arrives at that objective, and you can see now you're going to lose some health points, and a different icon is generated. It floats up to the top. It decrements the health, and when health reaches 0, you're going to lose that particular level. Now you lose your health for another reason. If you're in a fire exchange between a tank and a tower, and the tank wins that exchange and actually destroys the tower, you're going to lose health points for that as well. So here's an example. The tower has been destroyed, and now you can see the icon floats up to the health and decrements it. The last thing we're going to build here is a pop-up window, an upgrade window. So if I click, let me do that here. I'm going to click a tower, and you can see a new window pops up, and it gives me really 3 options. It allows me to upgrade from one type of tower to the next stronger tower. And that comes with a price. You can see the price is indicated here. And that's going to be decremented. That price is subtracted from your resource points. That's what resource points really do in a tower defense, right? It just gives you the ability to deploy new towers or to upgrade or repair existing towers. You can see that if my strength points are not at full strength, I have the ability to repair. That comes at a price. And again, that would be decremented for my resource points. And I may decide that I really don't want a tower in that location anymore, so I can kind of sell it back. and retrograde it. So that sell transaction, if I click that, I actually gain resource points back. Now, each of those factors, the upgrade factor, the repair factor, or the sell factor, are all computed based on a multiplicative factor that is a game parameter, and a comparison between the current strength and the full strength associated with that tower. How could I forget? How do you know whether you win or lose? Two conditions. Two conditions. The first is that very last tank and the very last strike comes onto the screen. You either destroy it or potentially it arrives at an objective and you maybe lose a couple health points. But if the health points are still positive, you've won. And you're going to see a red banner pop up. We'll show you how to do that. It says victory. You win that level, and then it goes back to the level selection panel so that you can figure out whether you want to play the next level. Alternatively, if sometime during gameplay your health reduces down to 0, then the game level immediately stops. You're going to see a gray banner comes up. Basically says you've been defeated. Your health is now 0. Again, it throws you back at the level selection panel, but it doesn't open up the next level available to you. So you're constrained to either repeating the level before or the level that you just lost at that point. Let's take a top-level view of how Build 5 extends what we completed in the last tutorial, Build 4. First, we're going to extend our main menu graphic user interface to include new nodes uniquely associated with scoring within the game. And second, we're going to add a new graphic user interface that's associated with selecting upgrade, repair, or sell transactions on a deployed tower. And then lastly, we're going to have a series of changes to our script files to implement the logic needed to support both resource and health scoring, as well as those tower options. Perhaps it makes a little sense to talk a bit about the game mechanics that we want to integrate into this tower defense project here as it relates to scoring. That's really going to serve as the basis for a lot of the project design that we're going to include here in Build 5. Let's start with the scoring logic for both resources as well as health. As I've outlined here, when you deploy a tower to one of the defensive positions, you're going to use available resource points to support that deployment. Upon destruction of an enemy tank, resources are going to be increased by the value, tank gain is the variable, for that tank, whether it be type 1 or type 2 or type 3. Alternatively, the destruction of a tower is going to result in the loss of health points, the player's health points. So if you destroy a tank, you increase your resources, but if your tower gets destroyed, you lose health. Upon an enemy tank reaching the objective, that's that building with a flag on it, the health of the player is going to be decreased for that particular tank type. So what impact do these scores have on gameplay? Well, when the health reaches 0, the player is defeated for that level, and you're going to be returned to the level selection bar. If the player still has a positive health value once all the enemy tank strikes have been completed, then the player is going to win. He's going to be victorious that scenario. As you can see in this, and I've made it a slow motion screen capture so you can watch this more carefully, I've placed some additional graphic user interface nodes at the very top of the game screen, and they display the current resources available to the player, as well as the current health associated with that player. And you can see there's both a text with a numeric in it, as well as an icon displayed for both categories, health and resources. We see that the towers and the tanks are now engaged in fire exchanges. First, 2 impacts on the health box. When one of your towers is destroyed, you see it generates and spawns a health icon. That icon floats up to the health box. When it reaches it, it decreases the health score for the player. And when the player deploys a new tower to a defensive position, the resources are going to be decreased by the cost of the tower. Also, when an enemy tank reaches the objective, the health icon is also spawned for that, floating up to the health box, and again, that decrements the player's health score. But lastly, when you, the player, destroy a tank, an icon is spawned which floats up to the resources box, and your resources are increased by the tank gain associated with that tank type. At this point, We're now definitely getting into the real crux to game design. Not just the look and feel, but also the underlying engine that creates excitement in playing the game. Not just keeping score, but now how to apply some additional logic that enables the player to make decisions that affect play outcomes. For a tower defense game, one of those key player decisions is how to best use available resources to repair a tower that's been depleted by tank fires, or to upgrade that tower to the next type, or lastly, perhaps to remove the tower altogether and gain some resources by that, quote, sell transaction. So how does our design accommodate that? First, the player can click a deployed tower to invoke an upgrade pop-up window. And if the player's resources are sufficient, the player has the option to either 1. Upgrade the tower type, which will expend resources by a computed upgrade cost, or they can repair the tower to full strength, again expending resources on a repair cost basis. The player also has the option to sell back the tower, which would eliminate the tower 1, but also increase the resources by a computed sell gain. That's a function of the original cost and its current strength versus the original strength. Let's take a quick look at how this new GUI operates. As you see, a tank is progressing along a path towards its objective, and once within range of a deployed tower, the two exchange fire, and that's the functionality that we built within the previous tutorial, Build 4. Clicking a deployed tower brings up this new interface that allows the player to either repair, upgrade, or sell the tower. If there are not adequate resources to perform any of these features, you can see that that option is grayed out. If the player clicks one of the buttons on the left, that action's executed and the pop-up then disappears. If you change your mind, you don't want to do any of them, simply click the tower icon in the middle, no action is taken, and the pop-up disappears. Later on in this tutorial, we're going to take a deep dive into the full pop-up window GUI, take a look at each of its nodes, the structure, as well as the underlying GUI script. Well, now that we've reviewed the nature of logic changes that we need to make in the build, let's take a quick look at the default project structure for build number 5, and that'll serve as the basis for each of the build segments in the remainder of the tutorial. We'll start with our game.project. The only real change here is that we've changed the title to reflect the fact that we're in build number 5, Resources and Health. We have no changes at all to our input bindings. We also have no changes at all to fonts, and there's also no changes to our modules. You'll have to trust me on this, but if you deep dive into all of our graphic assets in TD Images, you'll see that all of the graphic assets that we needed for this entire project were all loaded at the very beginning of build number 1, and so we don't incrementally add to them each and every time, so those remain all the same. We do see that we have an upgrade pop-up window as our new graphic user interface. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to dive into all the details of that in one of the segments later on in this tutorial. Now let's take a look at our set of scripts. As you can see here on the whiteboard, the majority of our scripts don't change from our previous build. The bullet action stays the same, the cursor, def pause, enemy highlights, the explosions number 1, 2, and 3, the map sheet, the pop-up window, and the treadmark action scripts all remain exactly the same as they were in our previous build, build number 4. We have several where we're going to go into those changes here in just a moment, where we've added resource and health processing. The controller addresses that. In the case of enemy tank actions, we have some resource icon spawning that takes place when one of those tanks is destroyed. In our main menu, we're going to have to add the resource and health related GUI components and the detailed logic in the script file associated with those. In our tower actions, we have to add the repair and the upgrade and the sell actions based on inputs received from the upgrade window GUI. And last but probably the most significant for this build is we have a totally new script for our upgrade window GUI. Well, now that we've completed the discussion of the underlying logic, let's go ahead and lay out the segments associated with build number 5. The first segment is going to be associated with the extensions that are related to our main menu graphic user interface. Those are going to be principally health and resource based. Those two scores and the icons associated with those scores, they'll appear really on the top, as we saw earlier, on the top of the game screen. Then we're going to focus on two script files. We're going to look at our underlying controller script file and enhancements, particularly enhancements related to upgrade actions, repair actions, resource points, health points, and bringing that all together from the various aspects of the game. And then we're going to also do a detailed walkthrough of the differences associated with our enemy tank script. Then we're going to look at our tower upgrade pop-up window. This is the window when you touch a deployed tower, and we're going to look at the graphic user interface associated with that, the new nodes associated with that GUI, as well as the underlying GUI script that supports that. And lastly, the changes and the extensions associated with our tower actions, and that would be completion of tutorial number 5, the build number 5 at that point. Okay, let's start with subject number 1. Subject number 1 is going to be extensions to our main menu graphic user interface. We're going to add the nodes associated with our resource points as well as our health points. We're going to spawn icons at various times during the game when either the health points are decremented or the resource points are decremented, and have them float up to the appropriate place up on the top of the game menu. And then we'll obviously go through the changes to the main menu GUI script associated with each of those features. Well, now that we have a better understanding of how the resource and health scoring logic is applied, I think the easiest place to start jumping into the actual changes we have made to the default project structure is to focus on the main menu graphic user interface and how it addresses the addition of resource and health scoring. Here's the GUI nodes that we had in our previous build number 4. And here's the set of GUI nodes that are now within current build number 5. As you can see, there's several new nodes have been added to the project. Available resources, the resource icon, health remaining, a health icon, a resource box, and a health box. And these nodes reflect an extension of the GUI to support the spawning of a floating icon whenever there's an action that changes either of the scores, as well as an indicator at the top of the screen for what the current resource and the health postures really are. And you'll see in just a moment that there's several changes within our main menu GUI script file that support the logic associated with these scores. Well, I can tell you, in the Tower Defense series, we've certainly gotten our money's worth, actually it's free, from the Diff Now tool. So let's go ahead and use it to compare our build 4 script file as it compares to the changes that have been made here now in build number 5. For the main menu GUI script, let's really quickly summarize. Obviously, we always make some changes in our header. We have added some new script properties associated with the new GUI nodes, and they are enabled and disabled as required. We've added a new local function, floating health decrement, and another local function, floating resource increment. And we also have 2 new message IDs that we process, subtracting health and adding resources. And we've added a win-loss determination at the end of a level. And finally, during the update sequence, we always refresh both the resource and the health points. Okay, at this point, let's go ahead and proceed with our detailed source code walkthrough. With the Diff Now comparison highlighted in the left-hand column, let's go ahead and work through this GUI script file piece by piece. Well, consistent with good game development practice, we have updated our header comments to identify the extended functionality. You can see that we have modified the local function reset level selection panel, that there were a series of script properties that reflect the new nodes within this main menu graphic user interface. So in this function, each of them is now going to be disabled, since we really don't want to see these new GUI nodes when the level selection panel is being displayed. We do have a new local function, floating health decrement. This is the function that's called each time one of the player's towers is destroyed. It displays an icon which floats up from the tower up to the location of the health box at the top of the game screen. Let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper. The first step is that this function creates a new box node at the location which is identified within the input parameters, loc, L-O-C, for location, using the GUI.newBoxNode function within the fold. The size of this box is also set to the local variable start size. The texture is set to pop up assets, and the GUI.playFlipBook function is called, citing the victory point icon as the image to be displayed. The function initially sets the node to be fully transparent, then calls GUI.animate to ease out both the color and the outline to full opacity. Then a GUI animate function is called to move the icon from its current position to the location within the health box, that's health loc 1, which has a callback function to then delete the node 1, and it calls a scale animation to the GUI node self health icon just to give a little animation as it resides back up into the top of the screen and updates the number. The function also creates a new text node, which is set to the numeric decrement that's going to be applied to the health score. It follows very similar logic to what we just reviewed for the icon, but sets now the text to transparent. It eases in the fade in function using GUI animate, and the floating text node goes up to the health box. There's a second type of floating icon within the game that's associated with resources, and this is executed using this new local function, floating resource increment. I'll go ahead and leave it to you to walk through the details within this function. They're essentially the same, a very close parallel to how we accommodated the floating health icon, just with a different texture and a play flipbook image and vector 3 locations that reflect the location of the resource box instead of the health box. Within the init function, we see now where the script properties associated with each of the new GUI nodes supporting health and resources are initialized. We highlighted this before. Using script properties for the GUI nodes has an extremely positive, very helpful impact on overall game performance. Note also, once declared within init, each of these new nodes are disabled. A couple changes to an onMessage function. When the GUI script processes a disable control node's message ID, aka when the pop-up window goes away, we're going to want to disable each of these new GUI nodes because we don't want them showing when the level selection panel is present. And the next extension occurs when processing the end level message ID. For here in build 5, logic's been added to check the global variable health points, the number of health points still available to the player. If it's less than 1, at the end of the level, then the player's been defeated and the play flipbook invokes a gray defeat banner. However, if the health points are greater than or equal to 1, then the player's victorious and the red victory banner is going to be displayed. 2 new message IDs have been added to the onMessage function. The first is subtract health. When this message ID is received, the floating health decrement function is called, passing the message parameters message.health and message.location. The second new message ID is add resources, and when that's received, the floating resource increment function is called, and again we pass message parameters message.rp, which is the amount of resources to be added, and message.loc, the location where the resource icon will originate. The last change within the main menu GUI script is within the onInput function. When the players release their touch, if in fact the players just released a select bar where the level status was true, that is, it was a valid level to be played, then we've added the logic which enables each of the health and resource GUI nodes. That's pretty much it for the changes to the main menu GUI script. Okay, here in segment number 2, we're going to accommodate 2 script extensions. We're going to look at the changes to our enemy tank actions as well as changes to our controller file. Obviously, a lot of new features have been added associated with resource points, health points, upgrade, repair, and sell transactions, and these extensions will accommodate each of those. We'll start this segment with an application of DiffNow against the Build 4 version of the controller script, as compared with the new Build 5 version. Here's what we see. Obviously, we make some minor updates to the header comments, and we also update the version global variable. We do have two new local variables, starting resources, which is the starting value of the resource points, and starting health, again, the starting value for all of our health points. We have two new global variables, resources and health points. They're both initialized within the init initial initialization, and we reset them here at the start of every level. And here you see in the init function where they're initialized. We update the title and the text entries for the opening pop-up window. And during update, each frame, we're going to determine if end-of-level thresholds based on the remaining health points have been reached. Quickly, let's take a closer look at each of these changes. Okay, first within the header comments, we've changed to reflect version 5.0 and added bullets to highlight the new functionality here, specifically setting the starting values for health and resources and resetting resources and victory points at the beginning of each level. We update the text within the pop-up window, and we've extended update to determine if an end-of-level condition has been met, that is, that the health points have dropped to 0. We've updated the global variable version to reflect that this is build version 5.0. A local variable is declared, starting resources, initially set to 4,000, and a second local variable is set, starting health, equal to 2,000. Within the local function start selected level, we have a tank counter that we reset to 0, and then we reset resources to the starting resources, that's the level that we start each level with, and health points to starting health. As part of the initialization function, init, resources and health points are set to their starting values here as well. Let's take a look at onMessage. Within onMessage and processing the message ID display game pop-up, the text variables, both title and text, are modified to reflect Build 5 functionality. And finally, within the update process, if health points fall below 1 and the game's not auto-reprocessing an end-of-level, we set the control variable self.processing end-of-level to true. And that avoids repeating this logic during each subsequent frame where the health is going to be less than 1. And then this also sends a message to the main menu to initiate that end level process. Okay, let's go ahead now and take a look at the enemy tank action script. Hey, if you'll let me, the changes here are going to be pretty minimal, so I'm just going to review them here using our DiffNow tool, and I think you're going to see these are pretty straightforward. Obviously, we update the title of the Lua script here in the header comments, and we also add a couple bullets to highlight the fact that the changes are going to implement the bullet counter, and it's going to extend destroy tank with a message posting that initiates the floating resource icon. Let's go see the first substantive change. Within the fire bullet function, this is where we're going to increment the script property bullets fired. Now, bullets fired will be declared in init, but here in the local function, we're going to increment it by 1 every time a bullet is actually fired at a target. Within the destroy tank local function, now when the tank is destroyed, it's going to post a message to the main menu, the message ID of add resources, and when that's received by the main menu is going to initiate the floating resource icon, and it's going to be passing two parameters, RP, which is the resource points, and those will be the resource points that are incremented to the player who just eliminated the enemy tank, as well as the location that it took place. Within the init function, we now declare a new script property, self bullets fired, and that's initialized to 0 here in the init. And lastly, within the update function, we're going to monitor the script property self tank counter instead of strength, which is we had done in build number 4. It doesn't impose any real changes to game functionality, but I found it useful for this particular build in dissecting what's actually happening as I was debugging it. Here in segment number 3, we're going to focus on our upgrade pop-up. We're going to have the new nodes associated with upgrade versus repair versus sell transactions, as well as an exit button. We're going to have a GUI script associated with that upgrade pop-up, and that'll be really the focus of this particular segment. Okay, hey, let's first walk through this new GUI, upgrade pop-up window. You know, from a design perspective, I guess I could have integrated all this into one big mega graphic user interface, but I thought it made a lot of sense to keep the nodes associated with this pop-up because it's really unique in terms of functionality, because it enables the user to upgrade, sell, or repair one of these defensive towers. It seemed to make sense to keep it as a separate GUI, so I've done that here. So let's first go ahead into our project window. We'll open up the upgrade pop-up window so we can take a look at it. And as you can see, we have a series of new nodes, and we're going to walk through each of these here in just a moment. We have a total of 3 textures: pop-up assets, graphic assets, and map assets. Those are exactly the same textures that we used in our main menu. Similarly, we have the same set of fonts that we used in our previous GUI, and also the same 3 layers, the background being at the very bottom with buttons on top of that, notices on top of that. Let's go ahead and walk through each of these new GUI nodes that are part of this upgrade pop-up window. Really in no particular order. Let's start with first the highlight. That's that red swirl that you see there. That's really there just for aesthetics. It just highlights you and focuses your attention on the particular tower you've just selected. The tower node is really an image of the tower type that you've just selected just to focus your attention, and it's surrounded by the exit circle. That's that red circle around the tower image, and when you click that, that'll allow you to exit the pop-up. There's the red circle for associated with upgrade. It has a yellow gear with an up arrow within it, and when clicking that, you're selecting the upgrade actions for this particular tower. And you'll notice next to that where it indicates upgrade cost of $225, that's text 2. That is the actual cost associated with executing that upgrade. It's red because it's a decrement on your resources. The next is the wrench within a red circle. That's the red circle repair node. And when selecting that, you're selecting repair actions associated with this particular tower. And next to that is the text 1 node, and that reflects the repair costs that would be decremented. Again, it's in red, would be decremented from your resource total. And lastly, we have the circle for sell. That's this little minus sign down on the very bottom here. And when selecting that, you're actually selling your tower back. And then next to that is text node number 3, and that's the computed sell gain that you would gain on your resources if this tower went away, in other words, you sold it. Now you will notice that if a particular action isn't possible, for example, the strength is still at full strength, so no real repair actions are needed, or you don't have enough resources to execute a repair or a sell, those red circle images are going to be grayed out and the text is not going to be shown. I think we're now ready to go ahead and do a detailed walkthrough of the upgrade pop-up GUI script that's incorporated here into build number 5. So we've included a quick header set of comments just to summarize the name and summary of the functionality of the script file, followed immediately by the declaration of several local variables. We have some factors that are going to be applied in computing the costs associated with the various transactions here. So we have a sell factor that's applied in determining the sell price, a repair factor associated with repair price, and an upgrade factor. And again, these, when we tune the game here in the last tutorial, this will give us something that we can modify to make the game more playable, a little bit more realistic, without increasing the difficulty such that the player becomes frustrated. We have 3 local variables associated with the actual end result of those computations. We have the sell gain, which is the number of resource points that the player would gain by selling the tower. Or we have repair costs or upgrade costs, would be the decrement on those resource points. We also have several working variables for text, rtext, utext, and stext for repair, upgrade, and sell textual information. We have two local functions. We're going to be declaring each of the new GUI nodes later on when we get to the init, but the local function enable all pop-up nodes enables each of the nodes in this particular pop-up, and the disable all pop-up nodes disables each of them. That's pretty straightforward. The real meat in this pop-up, besides just the display of the various nodes, is this particular function, the local function config cost, configuration of our costs. This is where we're going to actually do our computations. So the first computation will be associated with the tower cell option. That'll determine how many resource points are going to be gained when the user sells. And you can see that it's computed by taking that cell factor we talked about earlier, multiplying that against the tower cost for the particular tower type that we've selected, and then we multiply that by the ratio of the current strength to what the total strength, the maximum strength of that particular tower might be. Once we've computed cell gain, then we want to make sure that actually selling the tower is feasible, and we have a flag, delete node possible, which is initialized to true. So if in fact the cell gain has been computed, it's greater than 0, that flag is true, then we're going to go ahead and play the flipbook for the red circle delete. Then we're going to take the floor, the lowest integer of cell gain, and we're going to use that in setting up the S-text. If the delete node possible flag is false, then we're going to have the red circle grayed out. Let's go ahead and compute the tower repair costs. Repair cost is, again, it's computed by taking the factor, multiplying it against the cost of the tower for that particular type, and then applying that to taking the tower strength points for the tower type and subtracting the ratio of the current strength to what that total strength might be. Then we need to determine if the player has adequate resources to go ahead and pay for that repair. So we make sure that the total resource base, that's their global variable resources, is greater than the repair cost, and that repair cost is actually greater than 0. Then we set the repair possible flag to true. We use our GUI play flipbook to set the repair node to the red circle for repair. We take the floor, the lowest integer in the repair cost, and then we set the R-text to be repair cost plus the string repair cost. If it's not possible, in other words, repair costs are larger than those available resources, set the repair possible flag to false, and then go ahead and use the GUI play flipbook to set that repair node to the gray circle. And finally, we're going to configure the tower upgrade option. Those are the resources that would have to be paid in order to upgrade the tower from type 1 to type 2 or type 2 to type 3. So first of all, we want to make sure that the tower type is less than the total number of tower types, because you can't upgrade a tower type 3 in this particular case because we only have a type 1, type 2, and type 3. We compute the upgrade cost by taking the factor times that tower cost for the next level of tower minus the gain as if you had sold. And we set the upgrade possible to true. If the tower type is greater than the number, then upgrade cost is going to be basically a 999, which is basically an infeasible cost, and we set the upgrade possible to false. Next, for this option, we're going to make sure that we have available resources. So if the total resources is in fact greater than the upgrade cost, and upgrade is possible, then we're going to do a GUI play flipbook, display the red circle. We're going to take the floor of the upgrade costs. We're going to establish the U-text associated with that, and then we're going to post that upgraded type to the tower type. If the resources are not adequate, then we set the upgrade possible to false, and then we use the GUI play flipbook to the upgrade node to set it to a gray circle. And then lastly, again, we use the GUI play flipbook to go ahead and display the tower type associated with that upgrade. Within init, we do a couple of things. Obviously, we acquire input focus. We set the script properties for each of the GUI nodes, obviously to improve our game performance. And then we have a number of other script properties associated with this. Let's walk through them real quickly. We have several Boolean flags. We have the delete node possible, which we initialize to true. Repair possible is true. Upgrade possible is true. Pop-up active. If the pop-up is actually being displayed, that would be true. If it's not being displayed, that would be false. We have the current strength of the tower that we've clicked. We initialize it to 999, but we set that when we click the tower. We have the ID of the tower instance that we've been selected. We also have the ID of the defensive position that that tower is currently placed on. And lastly, we have the tower type that we've selected. When we initialize the game, we disable all the GUI nodes because we don't want them showing during the opening animation or when the initial level selection panel is being displayed. Let's go through our on message, the various message IDs that are processed by the upgrade GUI pop-up. The first and probably the most significant one is show the upgrade pop-up window. In that particular case, we set the script properties to the values of the parameters that are passed. There's a number of parameters that are passed to this. That would be, for example, the current strength of that tower is passed, the ID of the tower and its defensive position are passed, the tower type is passed, and then we also set the pop-up active to false because we don't want to have multiple pop-up windows showing. We only want one showing at a time. And then lastly, the tower position is passed, and we set that to the local variable TP. I have a simple print message in here. As you're checking your script, you may want to use that. At this point, we call the configure cost function that we walked through earlier. As part of showing the upgrade pop-up window, obviously we enable all the pop-up nodes. And then we have to determine the position that the upgrade pop-up should be located at. So we take TP, which was passed to us in that message.tower position, and we set that into a vector3 pop position local variable. So depending upon where the tower that we've just selected to upgrade or repair is located on the screen, we're going to make some adjustments in the X and Y position so that this pop-up window doesn't bleed over the edge of the screen. So as you can see here, if the X value of that pop-up position is greater than 512, in other words, it's on the right-hand side of the screen, then we set the X and the XT adjustments. And then we set the pivots for the 3 text nodes to have a pivot on the east side. Else, in other words, it's on the left-hand side of the screen, we have different adjustment factors, and we set the pivot to the west. With those adjustments, as you can see now, we position circle 1 and the text associated with circle 1. We position circle 2 with its text, and position circle number 3 with its text. And then lastly, we position the exit and the tower circles and the upgrade highlight. Now, there's going to be many occasions where the player decides after looking that they don't want to upgrade, they don't want to delete, they don't want to repair. They simply want to stop the upgrade altogether, and you do that by pressing the exit circle. That would send a stop upgrade to this particular text, and then you can see that we re-enable the defensive position, we release the input focus, and we disabled all the nodes to close this thing down. Lastly, when you receive the hide upgrade pop-up message ID, again, we release input focus and disable all the pop-up nodes. On input is where we really apply each of the touch actions from the user. We process the clicking of the tower delete. When it's pressed, we gray it out. When it's released, and we've selected that delete node, we use our GUI play flipbook to display the red circle for delete. And then we process the selling activity. We add the cell gain resources to our total resources, and then we post a tower change selected to the tower ID that we've just sold. We tell the controller to delete that entire tower collection so it no longer exists. We take the position we take the defensive position it was located at and re-enable it, and then we go ahead and release input focus and hide the pop-up nodes. In processing the clicking of the repair button, once that's picked, and we use pick node to make sure that it's the repair node, then we use our GUI play flipbook to go ahead and display the red circle and gray it out. When we release it, we make it back to red. We subtract the repair cost from our total resources. We send a message to the tower ID indicating repair action. We release input focus. We send another message to the tower ID that the tower change has been selected, and we disable all the pop-up nodes. When the user picks the tower upgrade, when he presses it, again we gray out the upgrade node. When it's released, We use the play flipbook to reinstate it as a red circle. Then we subtract the upgrade cost from our total resources. We send to that tower ID upgrade action as a message ID. We release the input focus. We send another message to the tower ID that the tower change has been selected, and we disable all the pop-up nodes to take the pop-up window off the screen. Almost there. Next, when we process the clicking of the exit button, we gray it out when it's pressed. We turn it back to a red circle exit when it's released. We send to the position ID and enable the collision object. Then we release input focus to disable all the pop-up nodes. And just to close out the logic here, when the user releases the exit node, but the pop-up active flag is false, then we set it to true. On to segment 4, where we're going to look at the extensions made to the tower action script. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm about ready to wrap this one up. So let's go ahead and complete our deep dive of the Build 5 script infrastructure with a comparison of what's changed within the tower action script, going from Build 4 over to Build 5. And one more time, we're going to use diff now to highlight those script changes. Above and beyond the changes in the header comments, we do identify a series of new script properties. We increment bullets fired as part of our fire bullets local function. Within the local function destroy tower, we now have some new message postings. Within the init, we have some additional new script properties. With an update, play animations are applied to the tower images within the tower assets box, depending upon if sufficient resources are available. A new trigger response message ID has been processed, and that's for when a tower is clicked after being deployed, and it posts that upgrade pop-up window. We have new message IDs associated with repair, upgrade, and sell actions. Those are being processed. And finally, costs are decremented from available resources when a tower is released to a defensive position. So now let's jump over to our code editor and conduct a much more thorough walkthrough of each of these changes. Header comments are changed to reflect version 5, and obviously we've added some additional bullets to highlight that new functionality. On line 37, you can see we've added a tower position script property, and as you see, we've provided those definitions on the right-hand side. That's the position of the tower, and we're going to use that when we pass it to the upgrade window to identify the position. Script property associated with cost, that's a cost in resource points, what it would take to actually acquire this tower. The tower change ongoing, that's a flag that indicates the tower is either being upgraded or repaired. The type, again, a script property that would receive the past parameters. And tower type, the active tower type of the tower that we've selected. The bullets fired script property is going to be incremented every time a bullet's fired. Yep, sorry, yet one more counter I've included. I like to use those during debugging. Please feel free to yank them out if they're not helpful for you. Within the local function destroy tower, when the tower is destroyed, we want to add two new actions. We want to post a message to upgrade pop-up window that hides the window, aka we want to cancel any ongoing tower upgrade actions if a tower is now destroyed. And then secondly, we want to send a subtract health message to the main menu. That will spawn a floating resource icon, and we're passing the health that's going to be lost, tower loss for that particular type, and the location as parameters within that message. We do identify several additional script properties within init. We have the self property B-angle quat, which is the angle in quaternions that the current tower is pointed at. Bullets fired, we've already talked about it, simple bullet counter. We have status, which is a status flag for the tower, either it's idle or active. And we have tower type, which is basically the type of the tower. And we receive that from the factory parameters when we spawn. Within the update function, if the tower has not yet been deployed, we now apply a check to see if there are adequate resources to meet the self-cost. So if self.cost is greater than the resources, that means the player can't afford it. So the tower image is going to be dimmed and a message is going to be sent to the orange highlight. That's that shield that surrounds that tower down in the box with a play animation to gray it out, and then the drag collision object is going to be disabled. In other words, you can't move it because you can't afford it. If the self-cost is less than the resources, then the player does have adequate resources and can move a new tower to a new defensive position. So a message to the orange highlight is going to be displayed, providing full color using play animation, and the tower body is going to be set to full opacity. Let's now review several changes within an on-message. Let's focus on several new message IDs that need to be processed. Next, we want to see what happens when you click the tower after it's already been deployed. So in that case, it's a trigger response. The own group is tower body and the other group is cursor. And if it's the first time that's been clicked and the game is not paused and nobody's dragging anything, then we perform the following. A message is sent to the upgrade pop-up window that directs it to be displayed, and a series of parameters are passed with that message to include the tower's position, the current strength of the tower, the ID of both the tower and the defensive position in which it's deployed, as well as the type of tower. The script property self.towerChangeOngoing is then set to true. This flag is going to be checked to ensure we don't initiate another upgrade pop-up window while this one is still open. And if self.towerChangeOngoing is true, then a message is sent to close the currently open upgrade pop-up window. When the player clicks the repair button in the upgrade pop-up window, it's going to send a repair action message ID to the tower action script. And at that point, strength points are going to be restored to the maximum available for this tower type, and the size of the strength bar is going to be recomputed, and a play animation is going to be used to update that strength bar image. When the player clicks the upgrade button in the pop-up, it's going to send this upgrade action message ID to the tower action script. And the tower type is going to be incremented to the next higher type, but no higher than the number of tower types available. And a message directing a play animation will change the sprite image to this new tower type. Also, the strength points are going to be updated to be consistent with that new tower type, changing the bar count and the strength bar image. When a message ID of pressed tower is received on a non-deployed tower, in other words, a tower that is not at a defensive position, then the shield's going to be disabled. That way it's disabled as you're dragging that tower around the screen. If the player has opted for any of the potential actions, upgrade, repair, or sell, then a tower change selected message ID will be sent to the tower action script. And then when that's received, the position is now reset, and the upgrade pop-up window is hidden, and the flag self tower change ongoing is going to be reset to false. When a message of upgraded type is received, in other words, you receive that from the upgrade window, it will set the script property self tower type to that new tower type that was passed as a parameter to this message. And lastly, when the player releases a tower, aka the release tower message ID is received, and the tower is being placed on an available defensive position, then the cost of that tower is decremented from the available resources. In other words, you're paying for the towers that you deploy. And that wraps it up for our tower action script. Last but not least, segment number 5 is really going to be an overall check of the build number 5 functionality. Let's just make sure it's accommodated all of the game design criteria that we established up front in the tutorial, and then we're ready to finish this one up. Okay, well, we've wrapped up another one. Tutorial 5 is now on the shelf. I hope it's been helpful for you. I hope you've learned some things from this. I think the vast majority of the game functionality is now kind of in the can. And listen, if you have any questions, any comments, any recommendations on how we can make these tutorials better, please send me a comment. I really appreciate that. I'll get back to you on each of them, and it means a lot to me. It really does. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. That way, as I provide either new updates or additional tutorials using the default game engine, you'll receive a notification so you can see those things are coming. If you haven't yet, there's a Google Drive URL down here in the description under here on the YouTube. You can download the full project that we've just walked through, so you can have it on your own machine. You can open up into Fold, and you can take a deeper look. You can tweak some things, see what the impact of those things may be. So what's next? Our last tutorial, tutorial number 6, is really going to focus on two things. We really want the ability to pause the game, kind of put it in suspended animation, if you will. That allows us to take a look at some things, maybe adjust our strategy a little bit, give us a moment to think, and then press and toggle that button to continue gameplay. The second thing is we want to look at game balance. We don't want to game too difficult, but we also don't want to make the game overly simplistic. So there's a number of parameters we're going to walk through on how we can accomplish that. Okay, until next time, hey, thank you again. I really appreciate everybody's support. Take care now. Bye.